So good morning, everybody. I want to spend a few minutes addressing the implications of Rich's announcement here about April tax revenues for our budget. And I have a prepared statement, and then I think both of us will be happy to take questions. You've often heard me refer to the Strickland administration's history of early and aggressive budget action as we recognized the emerging downturn in the economy. The next slide, so Mike, can you take us to the next slide? And I apologize here, it's not really bolded, so if you can't see it, do come up to the front, or you've got it in front of you. This slide shows you the pattern we've been watching since July. These are the numbers that underpin our tax forecasts. So when we did our initial forecast, so I'm going to make you try and remember that chartreuse green slide that Rich started with that showed you on the right side each time we reforecast. You can see here, each line on this graph is what Global Insight has told us our wage and salary growth rates would look like in Ohio as we move through this recession. And so you can see the top line, which is navy blue, is where they thought we would be in July of 2008. We'd have a dip a little below 3%, but still positive growth. You can see by November of 2008, they'd become a little more pessimistic and showed wage and salary growth in the third quarter of calendar year 2009 dipping at less than 1%. The next line down shows you in January of 2009, they were saying, well, actually, now we're thinking that the wage and salary income will actually decrease. And you will recall that I spent a good deal of time talking to folks about what the implications of that was for the state. Will actually decrease below zero. So we will see negative growth, that euphemism for less money in everybody's lunch boxes in the third quarter of 2009. But the last line here shows what Global Insight is now predicting for our performance in April of 2009. And here you can see truly grim forecasts of wage and salary growth at above negative 2%, almost 2.5% in the third quarter of 2009, staying negative at almost that rate in the fourth quarter of 2009, and then moving back, hopefully moving back positive in the first quarter of 2010. The time that line is spending below zero gives us an absolute sense of why that bar you just looked at went from scarlet, negative, to the gray part that we saw in April. So let me make a few comments about sort of how we've been looking at this through our forecast, but also through the budget process. Last December, you'll recall our scenarios included the possibility of bankruptcy or merger of one major automaker, but we didn't count on two major automakers. Right now, with the April numbers, our state's revenue performance is lagging even the most pessimistic scenario we laid out last December, which included a major downturn in our manufacturing sector and a continued deep freeze in our credit markets. So, looking at where we are, let's think about what this is leaving the state with through the remainder of the budget year. It's left the state clearly with a significant deficit emerging before us to close fiscal year 2009. At this time, we've only just begun the formal revenue reforecasting process that will culminate in conference committee at the end of the Senate's consideration of the budget over the next month. What we know so far is that the performance for the April filing season, and Rich has told us just about the income taxes for that filing season, That underperformance, coupled with the underage of $195.5 million from the 4 previous months since the last time we reforecast revenues in December, we think is going to create a fiscal year 2009 budget deficit of at least $600 million and perhaps $900 million or more. As you know, the administration has been working consistently over the past year to cut spending in response to the spiraling economic crisis we are experiencing and the continued deterioration in revenues. There are 3,500 fewer state employees today than on the day Governor Strickland took office. We have closed 2 mental health hospitals. We have closed a facility run by our Department of Youth Services. The typical state agency is operating at 80% of their appropriated amounts. These moves and other budgetary measures have already removed about $1.9 billion from House Bill 119. Last week we issued an executive order that sharply curtails agency spending on contracts, requesting that every agency issue stop work orders on every contract that is not critical to the health, safety, and welfare of Ohioans. We expect to avoid approximately $8.3 million in costs in fiscal year 10 and 11 as a result of the Department of Administrative Services and their hard work to lower rental costs by terminating, renewing, or consolidating commercial leases or relocating agencies altogether. Finally, through the executive order, agencies are being asked to meet a goal of reducing contract expenditures in the fiscal year 10-11 budget